I remember kind of slinking back to the car, feeling horrible.
Right.
So my boss at the time said, call me if anything weird happens. And I'm sure he didn't mean this, but I called him and I said, and I had a giant cell phone. It was like one of those ones that you plug into the cigarette lighter. And I said, this is what happened. I don't know how I should have handled this differently. And he said, wow, I've never had that happen in my entire career, but you handled it as best you could. So yeah, that definitely was.
Welcome to the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast. Whether you are a seasoned professional or a first-time fundraiser, we have the advice you need to take your next step toward major gift mastery. I'm your host, Tom Dauber, President of Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. We're talking about right now, presidents, executive directors may want to keep somebody around. It makes me think about working with presidents. And I'd like to ask you a question that's not on my list. And if you don't like the question, I'll just edit this part out, I promise. But so you've got the unique experience of working with a president who's from a non-traditional background.
Yes.
He's an executive from the corporate world. And not everybody gets that experience. But again, we may have a listener out there who is coming into a situation where all of a sudden they've got a leader whose background isn't in the nonprofit. Could you talk a little bit about what that's been like for you?
The president I currently work with, you're right. He came from the corporate world. So all of higher ed is new to him. He has his undergraduate. He does not have any advanced degrees. So things that we worked with a lot his first year, education about shared governance. It was just the most foreign concept to him in the entire world. I had to ask him to stop giving his cell phone number out to people because that was fairly common in the business world. And he questioned me as far as why. And I said, because the alumni will start texting you and you won't be able to keep up. And then they'll call me to know why you're not responding. And he was like, oh. Other things, just the whole, the politics in an odd way around higher ed are a little different than the corporate world. So education on that. It was very different for him in that alums could stop by and ask to have time with the president. He didn't have his shareholders asking about that in the past. So that was also, he was trying to be gracious and kind, back to the cell phone number comment. But, it ended up, I said, you need to stop doing that. I said, it's great, but no, you have other things to do. So, he's a quick learner. I appreciated from a business perspective some of his alternative thinking and brainstorming. That's just very different than the way higher ed works. So I guess I would tell them to be open. It's a educational process also. Realize that this person doesn't know all of our jargon and lingo, and so there's some headwinds there that you need to educate through. So.
Oh, that's great advice. I appreciate you talking about that. So I'm certain that there are some younger fundraisers out there today. They're working on the annual fund. They're dreaming of that day that they'll rise through the ranks to the VP slot. What advice would you have for those individuals today looking to emulate your success?
If you're staying at the same institution, make sure you leave your soon-to-be former job in really good shape, because they're probably not going to fill it right away, and you're going to need to do that job too. So there's that part. I've talked a lot about this, just really taking the opportunity to immerse yourself in different opportunities within advancement and getting to know other individuals within the university. The more you understand about what the university is doing from different perspectives, the better off you'll be able to do your job, the better off you'll be able to voice what the university does to not only donors and alumni and friends of the university, but also to the board of trustees and your peers. So I would also have them volunteer
Mm.
and take on roles within different professional organizations. So if you're here in higher ed, we have CASE, we have AFP, we have ICAA, which is Ohio and halfway into all the surrounding states for independent colleges. I would encourage them to listen more than they talk. Um, you you don't always have to have a comment for everything. A lot of the early time in your career, you need to just kind of listen to what people are saying and not saying. That's a hard skill to teach,
Mm.
but it's very, very important, especially if you're going to be a fundraiser.
That's a great point. Now, you mentioned Case. Um, Tell us a little bit about the volunteering you've done with Case.
Sure. So I started out early in my career being a volunteer. So I worked the registration table at
Okay.
a case conference. I volunteered to do that. I then was recruited. Well, then I did a presentation at Case on advancement services. It was a I don't even remember what it was. It was a very fantastic
I'm
presentation.
sure.
Yeah, and then I was asked to be on the conference committee for Case District 5. Uh, Took on that role, worked that a couple years in different capacities, and then I was asked to be conference chair for the Case District 5 conference. Did that. Eventually served on the Case District 5 board, which is now the Case District 5 cabinet,
Mm.
and being the chair of that. So really worked my way up through the professional organizations. It's so important because you get exposed to individuals you wouldn't normally communicate with. Some are from big schools, some are from small schools, some are from independent schools. But it's really nice to have that network of individuals that you can call on and say, I have this really great idea. It's so fantastic. And they say, don't do it. Or I have a problem. Let me talk to you about this. Or I emailed just this morning, a couple of friends from different organizations that are similar in size to mine because I'm working on a board of trustees presentation. I need some comparative data from them. And they all responded already.
Wow.
It's graciousness. It's important professionally also to have that network. I think you never know when you're going to need to look for a new job or want to look for a new job, and you have individuals you can reach out to where you might see a posting at their organization and be able to call them directly and say, okay, what's the scoop? Like, tell me what's really going on here. I see this posting, but is it in good shape? Is it in bad shape? What am I getting into here
Mm.
before I apply? So that perspective is invaluable.
Oh, that's great. I can see the value in that. Now, having served at both the AVP and VP levels, I'm certain that you face some real organizational challenges at times. Is there an organizational problem you've been able to solve as a leader that you are particularly proud of?
I don't know about solved, but I think I've made it better, which is great. So advancement has their terminology, and finance office has their own terminology that are similar but not the same.
Hmm.
So as an example, when advancement talks about a restricted gift, we know our meaning. When finance talks about a restricted gift, it's a similar but different meaning.
Hmm.
And so the educational process between the offices is important, especially as you're being asked questions from the facilities director who's asking if it's a restricted gift or not. The finance office answers one way and the advancement office answers a different way. Um,
Tell me about that. I'm not sure I've run into that issue in the organizations I've been in.
so when I say restricted, I means that it has a purpose.
Okay.
So it's either in my world, it's unrestricted, which in
Mm-hmm.
my world currently at Capital is annual giving.
Mm-hmm.
If it's restricted, that means it has a designation.
Right.
For finance, their restricted terminology means that it is donor restricted. So it could be annual fund, it could be anything. It's a slight variance,
Mm.
But when we're asking for general ledger numbers or something like that, and they say, is this a restricted fund? I have to think about who's asking it.
That makes a lot of sense. That's a great example.
So, yeah. So, what I do is once a month, I work with our university, the AVP for finance, and we do kind of a Sarsbain-Oxley review
Hmm.
of a couple of funds. One of them for us is all new money into endowed funds.
Hmm.
Another one is our annual fund, and then we pick a third fund, and we see how much money I have recorded during the time frame and how much money they have recorded during the time frame. And then we talk about how, if there's any variances, what those could be. And a lot of times it's moving money out of a temp holding or in different fiscal years or things like that. So it's a good practice, and it builds confidence from the board.
Yes.
When the board hears that, oh, you guys are in regular communication. Yes, yes, we are. So,
Oh, that's great. And it sounds like you've so what was the state before you ran into that situation, and how is it now?
it was a hot mess. It was just, I felt like everyone was talking over each other and telling everyone else that they were wrong,
I see.
and not understanding that we were both right. It's just different terminology based on
Got
the
it.
industry. Um, I feel like it's at a good place now, and we all talk to each other and ask good questions, and that's what I want. I just want open communication lines.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah, sometimes accountants can really, and it's funny because I just got off the phone with my accountant today because it's we're coming up on tax time, and I love my accountant. So, but I've had experiences with accounting groups where there was such a difference that it really got in the way of even counting gifts in a certain way.
Yes.
Because one organization, there's no doubt that they're going to count the full value of this gift in kind, like a piece of real estate, and then you find yourself with an accountant that doesn't want you to count anything, and you're like, but we receipted this. This is the IRS is going to count this as a gift. Why aren't you? Uh,
Yeah.
and that isn't going to change how I'm going to talk about it in my campaign. So yeah, it's a good thing you're tackling those things because there's a lot of opportunity for miscommunication, I think.
Yes.
All right. Well, there's a few questions I like to pretty much ask everybody when I have them on, um, around the memorable experiences that they've had with donors. So I'd love to hear from you. What was your most awkward experience with a donor? Now, no names. How did you get through it?
Yeah. So this one was easy as I was looking through the list. So early on in my frontline fundraiser major gift life, um, I had just the most uncomfortable situation. It I, had was working an area. I had secured visits. I had everything was all scheduled and timed out with drive times. I was ready. I even knew where I was going to grab lunch along the way. Uh, I had called all my donors in advance, confirmed everything. Everything was all set. I was ready. So I go out and I am going to talk with a gentleman, and we're going to talk through his estate gift. He had said, I have the university in my estate plan, and so we were just going to confirm everything. I was going to get everything documented. It was going to be a big win. I was so excited. I'd already talked to him about all the documentation I needed from him for his will. I was so ready. And I pull up to the house, and it's in a neighborhood, and there's a lot of cars parked on the street. Um, and so that kind of took me off guard. And I thought, okay, so I go up to the house and knock on the door, and it's a nicer day. And so the door is open, but the glass door is still there.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of peek in the house, and there's a lot of people walking around in there. And you kind of pause. I've already knocked. And a gentleman comes to the door. And I'm looking in and I'm watching people carrying plates of food and talking and hugging. And I'm just pausing, like, what is going on here? And all these scenarios are running through my head. And the gentleman who answered the door was actually the individual's son who I was going to see.
Mm.
And he happened to be a pastor, and he was gracious and kind. And I said, "Hi, I'm April Novotny. I'm with this institution. I'm here to see so and so. We had an appointment today." And he goes, "Oh, he passed away over the weekend."
Oh,
And this is where we just had the services, and we're just gathering at the house. Come on in. And I said, "Oh, no, 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 no." I said, I'm fine, thank you." I said, "I don't want to intrude. This is a very special time for you guys." He's like, "Oh no, come in. We'd love to meet you." And I was just like, "No, no, no, I don't think so." And he goes, "Well, where were you coming to do?" And I said, "Well, it seems a little late at this point, but we were going to talk about his will." And secure this for the university, and just so I could get it on the books and promote this wonderful planned gift that he had left. And he goes, "Oh, well, I think it's all taken care of." And I said, "Well, I really appreciate your time. I'm so sorry for your loss." You know, the things you're supposed to say. But I remember kind of slinking back to the car feeling horrible,
oh,
horrible.
right.
Um, so my boss at the time said, "Call me if anything weird happens." And I'm sure he didn't mean this, but I called him and I said, and I had a giant cell phone. It was like one of those ones
Uh
that you plug into the cigarette lighter. And I said, "This is what happened. I don't know how I should have handled this differently." And he said, "Wow, I've never had that happen in my entire career, but you handled it as best you could." So yeah, that definitely was memorable. Yes.
Wow. Wow.
Awkward. Yes.
That certainly was. Okay. Well, next question is kind of like that, but not so awkward. What was the most meaningful gift you've ever facilitated, and why was it so important to you?
Okay. So um, I had, I have some donors in the Baltimore area. It was a husband and wife, and over the years, I sat down with them many, many, many times. He developed brain cancer. Was very aggressive, and I had the opportunity to sit with them, before the diagnosis, during the diagnosis, and then with her after the diagnosis, and after he had passed. But we just had the best conversations. He was very pragmatic. Um, the doctors had told him, "You may have 6 months, you may have 2 years, but probably not more than 2 years." So he was really evaluating his life. We had great conversations about how they wanted to execute their estate plans. Um, what had meaning for them, what did they wanted to accomplish, what was important in their life. So I felt like by the time he was ready to go, we had ironed out kind of a game plan of the future and also what impact they wanted to have now. But I just felt so fortunate to be a part of those conversations, and that
Mm.
they invited me in to be part of those conversations, um, to help them, as they, I'm sure, were going through all kinds of treatment and grieving, and trying to enjoy the life that they had together, for that time frame. So I felt very honored to be with them during that time. And I still talk to the wife, and she's great, and um, she's having a lovely time, and still holds him dear. So yeah,
That's
it was very
fantastic.
meaningful.
That's very fantastic. When I think about what we do, and when we're doing, pharmacists talk about practicing at the top of their license, to talk about, things like pharmacotherapy, helping patients in wellness and health versus just counting some pills, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think when we're operating at the top of our license, we're really joining with donors to change the world in a positive way. We're facilitating um, a difference in the world through our organization. And it's not about persuasion. It's not about, I use the right words at the right time to get this person to part with their money. It's about, um, really helping a person actualize their life in a meaningful way. Um, So I love that story. It makes me think about that. Okay, on the flip side, can you tell us about a time when things just went horribly wrong? How did you recover?
Yeah. Um, yes, one came to mind immediately. So, in one of the organizations I worked, I had a colleague who departed the university.
Hmm.
And about 6 months after this individual left, I went to to lunch with a couple who he had worked with, and found out that they had received their signed gift agreement back in an unmarked envelope. It said it was, they could say it was from the area that, where the university was located. Um, and then the wife started crying because she thought that we didn't want this gift anymore. And that's why we sent it back to them. And they were thankful that we went to lunch, but very distraught about it. And so I apologized. I reinforced the impact of what their gift was going to do and how important it was. And I wasn't really sure what had happened, but we definitely wanted it back. We had it scanned, but maybe it was sent back to them for their own copy. I really didn't know what was going on at that point. Come to find out, he sent all of the gift agreements he had ever done with individuals back to them. And so then became the process of going through the trail of communicating with those individuals. And um, yeah, it was terrible. It was terrible. That was probably the I didn't have many other. Some people just didn't even realize what was going on.
Hmm.
Other ones, sometimes they said, "Yeah, I don't know why we got that back," but other ones had reactions like this couple where they were like, "I thought you didn't maybe want it anymore." I was like, "No, no, no,
Hmm.
farthest from it." So that was horrible, very horrible,
That
horrible
sounds
situation.
awful. So,
Yeah.
if I could just ask a question about that, so I know that I'm used to signing a gift agreement and giving a copy of what they signed to the donor. That wasn't what this was. This was take this thing back.
Yes.
Ah,
Like, you already have your copy, but here, you signed this 10 years ago, but I'm just going to give it back to you.
the original one.
The original one,
Oh
yes.
my. Well,
And with
that's
no explanation, just
yeah.
in an envelope.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll bet that was difficult to have those conversations and a lot of mess to clean up. Man.
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
Well, goodness. Well, I think we've gotten through all our questions. I guess I'd ask one more question of you, and you've been very generous with your time, April. Um, you know, if you were hanging out with a leader in in the fundraising world, maybe someone that isn't an experienced fundraiser, and you had one piece of advice to give them, something that you just talk about over coffee, what would you share?
Hmm. I would, I would, it depends on what they asked me, but I would tell them just treat everyone like they're the most important person in the entire world. Um, I have not hired individuals because they are rude to administrative assistants or janitorial staff. Um, it means the world to me. I think everyone's important. I just think everyone should be treated kindly. I, I, it's probably one of the most important things for me. So I think in all aspects of professional life and personal life, you should treat people with kindness, and it goes a long way. Um, I also appreciate when individuals want to learn. Um, that speaks volumes to me. I don't know everything. I want to have people working under me and for me and with me who know more than I do. Um, so I think it's important. We all can't do everything, so it's important to be surrounded with people who have complementary and even advanced skill sets than you have. It makes you a better leader as a whole.
Wow, those are some great pieces of advice. Perfect to end on. Thank you again, April. Wonderful having you on today. Wish you the best of luck in your fundraising at Capital.
Thanks so much, Tom. I appreciate you also.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
As always, I'm your host, Tom Dauber. Thank you for joining me as we journey together toward major gift mastery on the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast.